When my father slammed his hand on the dining table and sneered, "Buy your own food and stop living off us," he expected me to break down, plead, or pay up. Mom just nodded beside him, adding, "He's right. Quit freeloading." I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply smiled, walked to my room, and started planning. They thought they were putting me in my place, establishing absolute authority in front of the whole family. But what my father forgot was that I wasn't just living under his roof. I was the one quietly keeping the entire household afloat, managing every expense, invoice, and caterer behind the scenes. So on his 60th birthday, with 15 extended relatives sitting at a lavish, empty dining table waiting for a feast that would never arrive, I did exactly what he told me to do. And the look on his face made every single insult worth it. My name is Clara, I'm 32 years old, and up until a few months ago, I was living under my parents' roof. I wasn't freeloading, despite what my father loved to tell anyone who would listen. I'm a freelance accountant, and after a bad breakup, I moved back home to save up for a down payment on a place of my own. But I didn't just sleep in my old bedroom. I took over managing the entire household. I paid for the weekly groceries, handled the utility top-ups, and covered the extra mortgage shortfall whenever Dad's small consulting business had a slow month. I did it quietly, without asking for applause, because I believed that's what family does. Then came that brutal Sunday dinner. My younger brother, Nathan, the undisputed golden child who, at 28, still had his laundry folded by Mom, was sitting across from me, boasting about his new watch. I had just set down a platter of roast beef that I'd bought and prepared myself. Out of nowhere, Dad picked up the receipt I'd left on the counter, slammed his palm onto the table so hard the glasses rattled, and sneered, "Buy your own food and stop living off us." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Dad, I paid for that roast. I pay for most of." "I don't care," he barked, his face turning a deep, angry crimson. "You act like you own this place just because you bring home a few bags of groceries. You're a 32-year-old woman leeching off her parents. From now on, you don't touch our food, and you don't eat at our table. Buy your own stuff, keep it to yourself, and stop living off us." I looked at Mom, waiting for her to step in, to remind him who actually paid the electricity bill last week. But Mom just cleared her throat, nodded beside him, and added, "He's right, Clara. Quit freeloading. It's embarrassing." Nathan just smirked into his glass. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I slowly set my fork down, looked my father dead in the eye, and smiled. "Understood," I said quietly. They thought they had just asserted their authority. They had no idea I was about to take those words with absolute, terrifying precision. The next morning, I began phase 1 of my malicious compliance. If my father wanted me to buy my own food and stop living off them, I was going to follow his directive down to the exact letter. I ordered a compact mini fridge and a lockable pantry cabinet, having them delivered straight to my bedroom. Then I went to the supermarket and bought only what I needed for myself. Every single item, from my almond milk and eggs down to the butter, salt, and even the paper towels, was marked with a bold black Sharpie with my initials, CW. When Dad walked into the kitchen that evening expecting his usual hot dinner, he found the stove cold and the main refrigerator nearly empty. There was a quarter carton of expired milk, half a jar of mustard, and a bag of wilted lettuce. He stomped over to the living room where I was sitting with my laptop. "Where's dinner?" he demanded, hands on his hips. I looked up calmly. "I bought my own food, Dad, just like you told me to. It's in my room. Did you not buy yours?" He sputtered, his face flushing with irritation. "You're supposed to cook for the family. A freeloading leech shouldn't touch your supplies," I replied with a sweet smile before turning back to my screen. He stormed off, muttering insults, but he genuinely believed this was just a childish temper tantrum on my part. He even bragged on the phone to his brother that he had finally disciplined me and put me in my place. What he didn't realize was that my financial exit plan went far deeper than groceries. Over the next 2 weeks, I quietly logged into my bank portal. I canceled the recurring automatic transfer from my account into our joint household fund, the $800 a month that secretly covered the mortgage gap and electricity. More importantly, I opened the master spreadsheet for Dad's upcoming 60th birthday party. For months, he had been bragging to the entire extended family about the lavish banquet he was hosting at the house. What he conveniently forgot was that I was the one who had placed all the orders using my personal credit card: the luxury Italian catering, the custom 3-tier cake, the hired serving staff, and the premium open bar. With a few precise clicks, I logged onto the vendor portals and canceled every single reservation, collecting the full refunds back onto my card. Dad thought he was putting me in my place. In reality, he had just handed me the key to his complete public humiliation. By Saturday afternoon, the stage was set for my father's glorious 60th birthday celebration. He had spent weeks hyping up this evening to his siblings, cousins, and old business friends, promising them a magnificent catered feast to mark his milestone year. At 5 p.m., the guests began to arrive. 15 relatives poured through the front door, dressed in their finest attire, bearing gifts and empty stomachs. My father strutted around the living room like a king, sipping a drink and boasting about his success, while Mom fluttered about, making sure the dining table was set with our finest china. There was only one tiny problem. There was no food. By 6:30 p.m., people were starting to glance at their watches. My Aunt Clara leaned in and asked, "When is the catering truck arriving, Robert? We're starving." Dad chuckled, waving a dismissive hand. "Oh, Clara must have handled the delivery time. She's managing the logistics." He marched into the kitchen, expecting to see boxes of gourmet food being unpacked. Instead, he found me sitting at the kitchen island, quietly eating a salad I had prepared from my mini fridge. He stopped dead in his tracks, looking around the completely empty counters. "Where's the Italian catering?" he barked, his voice dropping to an angry whisper. "Where's the 3-tier cake? The servers were supposed to be here an hour ago." I set my fork down and wiped my mouth with a napkin. "Oh, I canceled them." His eyes nearly popped out of his head. "You what?" "I canceled all of it, Dad," I said calmly, raising my voice just enough to carry into the living room. "The catering, the open bar, the waitstaff, and the cake." "Are you insane?" he roared, his face turning purple as the room suddenly fell dead silent behind him. The chatter in the living room died instantly. Relatives began peering around the corner into the kitchen. "That food was for my birthday. Who gave you the right to cancel my party?" I stood up, pulled a neat stack of canceled invoice receipts from my pocket, and laid them out on the counter. "Well, Dad, 2 weeks ago, you slammed your hand on the table and told me to buy my own food and stop living off you. You made it very clear that your money and my money were entirely separate." I smiled brightly at the crowd of stunned relatives gathering in the doorway. "Since those orders were placed on my personal credit card using my hard-earned money, I decided to take your advice. I bought my own food, and I refunded yours." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop as 15 of our relatives stared back and forth between my purple-faced father and the stack of canceled invoices lying on the counter. You spiteful little brat." Dad spat, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and overwhelming humiliation. "You did this on purpose? In front of my family?" "No, Dad, I did this because I followed your rules," I replied, my voice steady and clear so every single person in the room could hear. I reached into my bag, pulled out a binder, and laid a set of printed bank statements beside the receipts. "For the past 2 years, I haven't been freeloading off you. I've been paying 70% of your utility bills, topping up your mortgage shortfall every single month, and funding every family dinner you bragged about." A collective gasp echoed through the doorway. My Uncle Richard stepped forward, picking up the statements and squinting at the highlighted transfers from my account. "Robert," Uncle Richard said, turning to my father with a look of utter disgust. "Is this true? Clara's been paying your mortgage while you've been running around telling the whole family she's a leech." "She's lying. She's twisting things," Dad stuttered, looking desperately toward Mom for support. But Mom looked completely trapped. When my Aunt Clara confronted her, Mom could only look at the floor, unable to deny the undeniable paper trail right in front of them. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The very relatives Dad wanted to impress turned on him, calling him ungrateful, arrogant, and cruel for humiliating the daughter who was actively keeping his household running. With no food, no catering, and a room full of furious guests, Dad was forced to pull out his own credit card, which was already near its limit, to order emergency fast food for 15 people. Watching my boastful father hand a pizza delivery driver his card while my relatives whispered in corners was pure poetry. He tried to claim he was the victim, but nobody was buying it anymore. The mask had fallen, and his pride was completely shattered. While my father was outside trying to explain to a pizzaman why his card was being declined, I went upstairs to my bedroom, packed my suitcases, and grabbed my mini fridge. I had already signed a lease on a lovely one-bedroom apartment downtown, funded by the money I saved from no longer bankrolling my parents' lifestyle. As I walked down the stairs with my luggage, nobody tried to stop me. My father couldn't even meet my eyes. He sat at the dining table staring silently at a box of lukewarm pepperoni pizza, surrounded by relatives who were making cold, hurried excuses to leave. Mom tried to touch my arm at the door, whispering a quiet "Clara, please," but I gently pulled away, loaded my car, and drove into my new life without looking back in the rearview mirror. 3 weeks later, the real bills started hitting their mailbox. My father sent me dozens of panicked text messages and voicemail recordings. The electric bill was overdue, the mortgage shortfall notice had arrived, and his credit card was completely maxed out from trying to cover basic groceries. The man who had sneered at me to stop living off us was now begging me to transfer just a few $100s to keep the lights on. I didn't reply with anger. I simply sent him a screenshot of his own words from that Sunday dinner. Buy your own food, keep it to yourself, and stop living off us. Then I blocked his number. Standing in my sunlit apartment kitchen, making breakfast with food I bought for myself in a home that belonged solely to me, I felt a deep, peaceful sense of freedom. Taking my father's disrespect literally didn't just save my financial future, it taught me my true worth. If you were in my shoes, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have handled it differently? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.